Hey there friends, Hank here, and today we are going to learn how to replicate authentic dusty weathering effects on our scale models, specifically on Allied vehicles participating in the Normandy Breakout campaign throughout the summer of 1944. When we look at archival footage from the Allied operations like Epsom, Cobra, Goodwood, and Totalize following the D-Day landings, it becomes quite clear just how dry and dusty much of the environment was, especially for heavy armored vehicles moving down these dirt roads. So in this video, we're going to look at some basic techniques to achieve this look on your next scale model project using a few key products. With that said, let's hop right into it. But first, a quick word from our generous sponsor today. Now, anybody who's been in this hobby for long enough knows the feeling of getting up after some long hours at the bench and your neck and your back are just all jacked up. Try as we might, we always end up hunched over our project, working away, and our bodies pay for it afterwards. So when the folks over at FlexiSpot reached out and asked if I wanted to try out one of their adjustable height standing desks, I was eager to give one a go. I've always told you guys I never accept sponsor deals unless I think it's for a product that could be genuinely helpful to you all, and in the couple of weeks that I've had this desk already, it's been a game changer and my back is thanking me. This here is the FlexiSpot E7 Plus model, and it's one of the sturdiest rigs they offer. The thing is a tank, no pun intended. One of the biggest things I was worried about, and the reason I hadn't picked up a standing desk in the past, was the stability issue. After all, I didn't want this thing wiggling while I was trying to paint and film, but this desk is honestly sturdier than either of my traditional workstations, which I was very impressed by. The table itself is rated for 550 pounds static capacity. As you can see, you can lift this old scale modeler up without any trouble at all. The programmable keypad allows you to save your height preferences right where you want them, anywhere from 26 inches all the way up to just about 52 inches. And FlexiSpot has a whole slew of desktop options and accessories you can select from to customize your desk to your specific needs. I ended up snagging one of these awesome under-desk cable organizers to get some of my mess out of the way here. So if you've been hemming and hawing about getting yourself a standing desk like I was, I can vouch this FlexiSpot E7 Plus is wonderful. If you do want to learn more about the full line of FlexiSpot products, be sure to check out the links down in the description below. And with that said, a big thanks to the folks over at FlexiSpot for sponsoring today's lesson. Now, let's get back to the modeling. Alright friends, now we're going to start out on our weathering work today with this set of rubber band tracks from one of my Tamiya Sherman kits. Worth noting, these are depicting the steel T-54 chevron tracks that were common on many Sherman tank variants throughout the war, so we'll be painting these up as such. These are not the rubber pad tracks that we also see on many Sherman tanks, so keep that in mind. If you're using rubber block tracks, you're going to want to skip the aluminum step in just a minute. As always, the first thing we're going to want to do with our tracks is hit them with an all-over coat of flat black primer to give us a nice base to work with. Once our primer's on there, we're going to break out some of our white aluminum and do a little dry brushing to accent the worn portions of these tracks that would be scraping on pavement and cobblestone and the steel decks of landing craft. Now, this is going to look a little stark at first, but fear not, we're going to be doing quite a bit of pigment work that will really balance this all out. Alright, next, let's take our matte varnish and spray that all over our tracks here to seal in our acrylics and prepare for a little weathering work. Once our varnish coat is fully cured, let's grab some light dust wash and give both sides of our tracks a nice thorough coating here. Again, this will look a little heavy-handed at first, but once the product dries, it'll look perfect for what we're shooting for. For our next step, let's take a nice stiff bristled brush and start dappling some Europe earth pigment in a random pattern all over the outside surfaces of our tracks. We want to do this while the light dust wash is still wet so that some of this pigment will bond and clump up in the recesses of our tracks here. I find that pigments are the easiest and most effective way to weather a model because, after all, pigments are essentially just dust already. We just need to mimic the way dirt and dust would behave in real life, and that's half the battle right there. Now, we're also going to want to brush a bit of our pigment onto the inside of our tracks as well, but this side needs to have significantly less buildup, as this portion of the tracks would constantly be dragging over the road wheels while the vehicle is in motion. For a bit of variation here, let's grab some winter soil pigment and dapple that onto a few sections of our track as well. Sticking with just a single pigment can look a little bit too perfect, so breaking up our dirt color in some spots can add a nice bit of character and authenticity. And for even more variation, let's add a little bit of light dust pigment as well. This of course looks all clumpy and messy right now, but once our wash dries, we can knock off the excess and we'll be left with a super realistic looking set of tracks. While our tracks are drying, let's tie in our weathering work on the vehicle itself. Worth noting, we've already done some pin wash work on this tank, and it's been all sealed in with a layer of matte varnish ahead of time. Our first step is going to be with the light dust wash again, and we're going to want to dapple some of this in a rather haphazard, inconsistent manner on the top and bottom portions of our lower hull, like so. And while we have just a little bit of wash left on our brush, we can flick a few splatters of the product onto the upper hull as well. This will give us the appearance of our tank having driven through some puddles and the like, and then the dust dried over those wet splashes. Okay, now let's take our Europe Earth pigment and dapple that over the areas where we just applied our wash on the lower hull. Nothing fancy here. It's okay if the pigment spreads onto some of the areas where no wash is applied. We can also lightly brush some of this pigment onto the lower edge of our upper hull, like so, to create some dust stains that have kicked up on the higher portions of the tank as well. And for some variation once again, let's dapple a little bit of winter soil on there as well. For the upper surfaces of our vehicle, we can jump right to our Europe Earth pigment, no wash required, and dapple a very small amount of this onto the areas of our vehicle where dust might accumulate, around stowage, the turret ring, the fenders, etc. We'll want to repeat this same process on the turret itself as well. Alright, once our wash is dried on the vehicle, let's grab a nice stiff bristled brush once again and start to blend in and knock off any excess pigment on our lower hull, like so. For a little extra blending, you can always reactivate the wash layer with a little bit of enamel thinner like I'm doing here, but that's up to you. We're going to want to do the same thing on our tracks as well. Just take that stiff bristled brush and start knocking off any excess pigment. Now let's grab some gunmetal pigment and start to gently brush that over the metal chevrons on our tracks. This will provide a nice worn metallic pop and help accentuate that initial aluminum dry brushing we did way back in the beginning of this process. At this stage, we can snip our tracks off the rubber sprue and cement the ends together. It's also important during the entire weathering process to avoid getting too much pigment and mess on the actual connection points of the tracks. It's okay if there's a little bit on there, but just try and keep them as clean as you can. Alrighty, let's pop our drive sprocket off and stretch our tracks into place on the tank. And now all that's left to do is remount our turret, and we're in business. Just like that, we've got ourselves some authentic dusty weathering for this Normandy Breakout Sherman. If you would like to check out some more scale modeling armor tutorials, you can always do so right here. And until next time, my friends, be well, happy building, cheers.